What's up, everybody? Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs anyway. I am one of them. My name is Adam Mamawala. I am not joined by Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin McCaffrey's in Vegas blowing his life savings on betting on the Cubs to win the World Series in 2027. But I am joined by Evan Hernandez, a comedian who lives in New York and loves the Yankees, which does make more sense objectively. But Evan, welcome to the pod. How you doing, man? How you feeling?
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Weird place to be as a Yankees fan, with no team in the playoffs right now in October. But
Tough
there's nothing
life.
like, yeah. But I know it's. I don't have much perspective on that, talking to a Cubs fan. But it's always, even with that, there's nothing like playoff baseball. The urgency has just been, it's always great, even if it's not your team. So I've been into it.
Dude, every year that the Cubs, other than, the one time that they actually won the World Series, any year that the Cubs get eliminated, whether that's at the end of the regular season or, it's been in July sometimes, but like whenever they're out of it, I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm going to just detach and like not really watch a lot of baseball. And then immediately I'm in. Like I think I gave it like a game and a half. And then I was like, what am I doing? I love baseball. I'm going to watch all of these games.
I'm exactly the same way. I skipped the wild card series and then the divisional series started, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in now. It I try to
Yeah.
what's the Godfather quote, and it always pulls me
Just
back
just
in. It's
when
always
yeah,
this.
just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Exactly.
I mean the wild card series is left something to be desired. They were all, two game sweeps. And I think when Kevin and I recorded last, it was right before those had all begun, or maybe like after the first game. So we didn't know how it was going to play out yet. Did you have any real takeaways from those results? Was there anything that was surprising to you? Obviously, as a Cubs podcast, we're happy to see the Brewers get embarrassed and eliminated on their home field. But did anything jump
Yeah.
out at you?
I was surprised to see Tampa go kind of the way that they did to Texas. I mean, Tampa is always one of these organizations that always puts a really competitive team on the field, at least of late. So it just
It's
to
got to
see
be
the
really hard on their
pitching staff
fan.
go out. Yeah, yeah, that's it's crazy that in an elimination game they couldn't even get some 15,000 fans out to
So
the
bad.
drop. It's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. So, I mean, maybe that is something to do. If you can't fill out a stadium, if your players don't, it might have effect on the players. But I was surprising to see that team go out because as Yankee fans, we don't hate. Of course, we hate the Red Sox, but we don't
Yeah.
necessarily hate. I was rooting for Baltimore. Like I don't hate. I don't hate the Rays. I mean, the Yankees got in brawls with the Jays this year, but I don't.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily hate these teams. So
Honestly, I mean, I think to a Yankees fan, I would imagine that Baltimore is kind of like how we as Cubs fans felt about Pittsburgh a couple years ago when they had that really nice run with McCutcheon, where they Cubs beat them the one year, but like they got to the playoffs that previous year, and they, despite being in the same division, it was like you almost don't even feel threatened by them or weird rooting for them because they never really make a lot of noise. I guess a lot of people probably thought of the Cubs that way too for a long time, but I think the Orioles kind of have that place in the AL East where it's like they're kind of a fun, young, likable team. Like there's not really a lot to hate about the Orioles.
no, not at all. And I think even though they're going to get beat, probably by Texas here, or they did get beat by Texas yesterday. That team's coming. I mean, either way, like that young core is there. They have them until they got to pay them whatever until that arbitration year is.
Yeah.
And these guys are all like 21 years old. They got possibly 4 or 5 more years with these guys. So they're
Yeah, I
coming.
mean, if they spend some money on pitching, I don't think you can assume that they're going to just go out and everybody's going to produce the same way they did this year, next year. Like nobody in the world saw the Orioles winning 100 games. I don't even think the Orioles saw the Orioles winning 100 games, even in their most optimistic fantasies of what this year could be. It does really suck for them that they got swept. I mean, to have that kind of year and then not even get a single playoff win is tough. But at the same time, like Texas is a great team. They we'll get to this later, but like it's kind of feeling like a potential like Texas, like all Texas showdown here. We'll see what happens in the Astros Twin Series, but that'd be a pretty spicy ALCS matchup is Rangers versus Astros, and I think most people, I would assume you as well, will be rooting for the Rangers if it gets to that point.
Oh, 100%. I got nothing in me to root for the Astros here as a Yankees fan. Also, the Rangers have put a great team together. They made the right moves at the trade deadline. They added pitching. The Degrom add was the right process. Fortunately, obviously, the top his surgery situation, and then The searchers ad was a great process too. Hopefully he gets back for the ALCS here.
Yeah.
But they made the right moves. I mean, they're mashing right now. That whole lineup. I mean, like the weakest point in their lineup right now is like Leody Taveras hitting ninth, and he's still a problem switch hitting, taking good at bats. Like
Yeah.
it's a stacked lineup, and I'm looking forward to seeing the matchup between the two biggest Cubans you've ever seen, the corner outfielders, Adolis Garcia and Jordan Alvarez.
I'm holding out hope that the Twins win today, as we're recording this on Wednesday. If the Twins win today, then obviously it would go back to a Game 5 in Houston, which you would think the Astros would have the real advantage in. But Twins are a likable team. They're kind of like a nothing team to me, where I'm like I don't really feel any way about them one way or the other. I was happy to see them finally get the monkey off their back to win that first playoff game, and then obviously win that first round series. But yeah, I it would in some ways Twins and Rangers would be fun, because then whoever comes out, I would be fine with that team. But it's not as fun as having a team that you can really actively root against. So I feel like Rangers Astros could be fun for that reason. And also, in terms of the Rangers versus the Rays, I kind of like it now when a team like the Rangers beats the Rays, because it's like, all right, one of you spent a shitload of money, the other team refuses to. And yeah, the Rays always seem to make the playoffs, but like, have they ever won the World Series? They have not. So to me, that does not. And same with the A's, since they've started their kind of Moneyball ways. Like, they've never won a World Series in the past 20 plus years. And I as a fan of a team who has money and who wants the team to spend money, and obviously you're in that situation with the Yankees, like, I do not want a Rays Royals ALCS ever, because I want teams to be encouraged to spend money.
Exactly, yeah. It should be because there's something to be said to the frugality of it, and you don't want to pay the luxury tax or whatever. But in the situation of the Yankees, it's frustrating, and I'm sure sometimes with the Cubs it was too, that the money's there, and then for whatever reason now they don't want to spend it, and it's like, well, then you're going to get that result, and you have to have a
Right.
well balanced team, and it kind of just goes back to team construction and things like that. But the teams in the playoffs right now, they're balanced teams. They have their situational hitters. They're not all power hitters. It's a very good mix of players. So you
Yeah.
get most of those front offices that made those moves.
Now, for me, I feel like the best series right now is Phillies Braves. I don't know how much you've watched of those first two games, but game one, Phillies come out, look really impressive. They shut out the Braves 3-0, which, as I can attest to as a Cubs fan who watched the season fall apart against the Braves, that lineup is deep. They do not quit, and just shutting out the Braves ever in any capacity, even in a spring training game, is incredibly impressive with this group. And then in game two, the Phillies are up 4-0, and little by little, the Braves start getting back into it. Austin Riley hits a big go-ahead two-run homer, and then in the top of the ninth, Bryce Harper is on base. Nicholas Castellanos. I assume Tom Brenneman was apologizing for some sort of racial slur at this moment, and Nicholas Castellanos drove a ball to right center field that was ultimately caught on an incredible play, and Harper got doubled off. I mean, that's one of the cooler ways for a game to end that I've seen in recent memory. What did you think of that one?
I did catch the end of that game. Just the magic of playoff baseball. If I could describe
Yeah,
it in two innings, I'd give you these two innings of like, this is what playoff baseball is. I mean, what a homer by Riley. I mean, in that situation to take the lead there, and then the catch by Michael Harris at center field, and that was
he's
just
so good
showing
in
off his
center.
arm,
Yeah,
his range. I mean, and then
even
Harper
though he
just
missed
getting
Albies,
doubled
and then
up.
it was Riley who made that little kind of like backhand scoop and threw to first. That was amazing.
It was a great play, great sequence of events, and all I couldn't help but think, man, Harper just not tagging up is going to get crushed on Philly radio, the next day. But it's just one of
Well,
those, even in some, it's one of those situations where
yeah, I don't think the right move there is to tag. I think if anything, he just got a little too far, because I think the idea there is it's not like the play in the World Series, which I'm referencing something you might not specifically remember, but like in that top of the 10th, Chris Bryant hits a ball to right center that makes it to the warning track. Albert Almora like wisely tags up, gets to second, and that sets up the whole inning. But the difference there is that Rajay Davis was like coasting back, and you could tell he was going to catch the ball. In this case, it really wasn't clear if that ball was going to be caught. So I think, and you played baseball, like I would assume that what you're supposed to do in that situation is if you're Harper, you got to score if that ball falls. You're down by 1 run. So you probably get yourself to second or to around second, and you get far enough that if the ball falls, you can score, but not so far that you can't get back if it's caught. I feel like he was like halfway between second and third, which is just too far in that situation. Like it's one of those where if you didn't have to tag second again, if you could just cut diagonally across the infield, he might get back. But I think in as much as people might criticize him for getting doubled off there would have been just as much criticism if the ball falls and he only gets to third.
That's true. It's one of those where, it's one of those halfway kind of look at it. But I don't know if he made it all the way to second base. It was kind of crazy that he got doubled up. I mean, the injury was to his elbow, so I don't know what it was that
Well,
he
he
couldn't get. But
stumbled,
yeah,
I
it's
think,
just
getting
he's oh, he
back. It
did
was
fall.
like
Yeah.
changing his momentum got him. But yeah, there I saw a very cool video today of just kind of like a almost like a dugout view of that play with the crowd noise, and it's awesome because there's a first like pop of sound when he makes the catch, and then there's this like building sound as the play is developing, and then when Harper gets doubled off, it's like it sounds like something exploded. Like I'll watch shit like that on YouTube all the time, just like loudest crowd moments. Like I love that stuff.
Oh, there's nothing like it. That's just back in that playoffs baseball atmosphere. I mean, I've been to one playoff game at Yankee Stadium, and just it's a different sport. I can't even like describe the difference all the regular season to the playoffs. There's
Well,
a difference.
I think the fundamental difference, and I mean, I obviously I've been to numerous playoff games, but especially having gone to that World Series game, which was a particularly tense game, Game 5 of the World Series. Like, I think what's so unique about watching playoff baseball in person is that even for big fans like you and I, right? We went to a Yankees Cubs game this year. During that game, we're still talking to each other, we're still shooting the shit, we're still going to get a hot dog, whatever. At a playoff baseball game, the majority of the crowd is locked into pretty much every pitch. And that is not an experience that you ever get with regular season baseball. Like maybe in a tense moment, maybe towards the end of the game you get that, but for 9 innings sustained, you just don't have people paying that much attention. And I think that's what's so cool about it is that sort of like group think feeling where you're like, we are all focused on this same objective right now. And everybody's just, yeah, it's like we as fans get to be locked in the same way the players are.
That's true. That's a great point. That's exactly what it is. No one's, going to get a hot dog or going even to the bathroom or even getting all your beers at the beginning of the game. You're
Yeah.
just sitting there watching it. So that definitely that adds to the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, during when I was at the World Series, I went at one point to like pee and get one beer, and I missed half an inning. And then I did the math, and I was like, "Wow, I just missed out on watching what I basically paid $80 for that half inning. Like that's how much I paid for the ticket that I didn't even want to miss any portion of it because I was like, yeah, I just and in a World Series game or a playoff game, you don't want to be the guy who like went to pee and then you miss something historic happening because then you'll be
Exactly.
like me, the guy who left early when Aaron Judge hit his 60th home run last year.
Oh no, that's right.
Yeah, not a
I
happy
remember
memory.
that.
Now the other NL series is very interesting because the Diamondbacks they dispatched the Brewers pretty impressively, and now they are playing the Dodgers. And I don't I don't want to be a hot take sort of guy. Is Clayton Kershaw just a not a good postseason pitcher? I feel like we've had enough of a sample size here that it's not some like when people are like Mike Trout was bad in the playoffs. It's like yeah, he played 3 games his whole life. Clayton Kershaw has pitched a lot in the playoffs, and he has really not been particularly good.
That there has to be something to it. I mean, you look back at the World Series that they won in 2020, and you're like, hey, they got one there, and it's like, oh wait, there was no fans, I think, that year. So maybe
Well,
or if there
but
was at
also
the end, yeah,
maybe he wears down. Maybe it's that it was a 60 game season and that he still had more juice left than he does at the end of a regular 162 game season.
that too. If you're in 200 innings at that point, your arm's probably feeling different. It's just a combination of factors, but we have now, over like 2 decades of this with him now, so it's clearly a pattern. I mean, they went to him, in the first game of the series. I think it was in the first inning he gave up. He kind of got shelled in the first inning.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he was absolutely it was a disaster. And I mean, there's no as the road team that is exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to take the home fans out of it. And I mean, I don't know how much tickets were, but it would really suck going to a home playoff game and your team gives up, what was it, 7 in the first inning or something like that? It was crazy.
100%. Yeah, it's one of those situations where if they're in this scenario again next year, do you not hand them the ball in game one? It's just one of those things where, like, as the team, as the manager, as the GM, do you have to think? you not hitting them the ball in game one next time, you get the opportunity if they advance even to the next round.
Well, I think there's speculation that he maybe will be done. I mean, I somehow I don't think that that will be the case, but I mean, if the Dodgers lose Game 3, there will not be another Kershaw appearance this year. Like at the moment, I think he's slated to pitch Game 4, which even that is arguably kind of a questionable move. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, do you have any other feelings on that series? Are the Dodgers just like not showing up? Are the D-backs the hot team right now?
I mean, I think that baseball it comes down to I think just it's the hot team at the end of the year. It's a lot like hockey in that sense, and it's you wonder like there was that conversation this week about the reseeding the teams after the
Right.
wild card round. So it was that debate of well, the Braves should have had the Diamondbacks and the Phillies should have gone to play the Dodgers, but now if you look at it like, would you have wanted that? I don't know. I mean, so that's obviously still up for the debate,
Right.
but initially I would have said, yeah, let's reseed, because of just record, but given what's happening
I'm
right
a
now.
proponent of reseeding. I think that I like the fact that the way the format is now, it gives a huge advantage to the best couple of teams because for a long time that really wasn't the case, right? Like there was no such thing as a bye, and you just had to like in baseball, yeah, home field is nice, but it's not quite the same as it is in other sports. So I'm a fan of giving those top two teams in each league the bye in the first round. I'm also a fan of reseeding because like yeah, it might not always work out the way you intend it to, but I think if you are the best team in your league, you deserve to have all the advantages when it comes to the playoffs. So if that means reseeding, that's fine. What I do think is interesting is that there are a lot of people, number one, complaining about the wild card because of the fact that I guess none of the series went to 3 games, and people are like, oh, there's not the same like thrill that it was watching the 1 game wild card. But then at the same time, I feel like everybody hated the 1 game wild card. Like as a person who watched their team who won 95 games losing a fucking 1 game wild card to the stupid Rockies, like it was awful. It was such a shitty feeling to be like, we've just watched so many games. The Cubs played 163 games that year in 2018, and then it was just over. They just had a bad game and it was over. And I know the Yankees have been in that game a couple times. I think they've maybe won one, lost one. I want to say they lost to the
They beat
Astros 1 year and then beat the Twins in the other year, or something like that.
I believe it was I want to say 2019 beat the A's at home, and then I want to say
No,
either
lost to the
2020
Red
or
Sox.
2021 went to Boston. Like there was some
Yeah.
games they lost a series there at the end of the year,
Hmm.
supposed to be a home game, then went to Boston, and then Garrett Cole just did a Garrett Cole, and it was done. Within the
Yeah.
first few innings. So yeah, that it sucks that a season from that. Yeah, like you said, a season of that length and of that consequence would then amount to one game that in baseball it's a lot like in March Madness. I mean, anything could happen. So it's better now. Definitely better that it's three now for sure.
Yeah, and look, I don't. I arguably there are already too many teams making the playoffs. I certainly don't want the. I don't want baseball to ever be like the NBA, where like more than half of the teams get in, because it's just like not. To me, that's not how baseball should be. I have always felt that the divisional series should also be 7 games. Like to me, there's no reason that that isn't feasible because when you look at the scheduling, they're giving them off days a lot. Like what is the reason that they couldn't do a best of 7 divisional series, which theoretically then should favor the better teams, right? Because there's less, if you're the Dodgers and you go down 0-2, yeah, it's still a tall mountain to climb, but like it's more conceivable to do that in a best of 7. Why don't they do like a 2-3-2 format? You get the travel days are the off days. It's not like it would push the season that much further. What could it possibly push it? Like another day? And then I think that you keep the wild card the way it is. You still have it best of 3 and have the first two ranked teams get buys, and then just make the divisional series 7 games. Like, how would you feel about that?
I I'm all for it. I mean, the NBA's got what 4 7 game rounds,
Yeah,
right?
and let's be clear, the NBA is too fucking long. The playoffs are two and a
It's
half
too long.
months. Yeah,
And hockey has the same idea. So I mean, it
yeah,
from a 7 game perspective, I mean, like I would say, like let's do it just from the sense of it's a long season. It's like you said, the scheduling wouldn't be affected that much, and also like you kind of know too many teams make the playoffs in the NBA and the NHL, but at the end of all those 7 game series, like without a doubt, this was the best team, and this was the
yeah.
best team that won it. You won all those series. You won 4 in each one. There was kind of not for sure. There's luck involved in the game here or there, but you can be pretty confident most years, barring injuries, that this was the best team, and I think that would help baseball in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also been some discourse about like, baseball, arguably more so than any other sport, is such a marathon, right? There's just so many games that are played that it does feel shitty that a team like the Orioles won 101 games and now they're just done. And like, yes, people will remember it as a good year, but ultimately it's just like, yeah, well, they didn't get it done in the playoffs. And the Braves very well might lose to the Phillies. And if that happens, same thing, right? They were the best team in the NL, and now it feels like an unsuccessful season. But in soccer, like, European football, as I understand it, like the team that wins the most during the regular season, like they are the champions. It's not to say there aren't other tournaments, but like, do you think baseball fans would ever get behind something where it's like, it means more to be the best team in the league, but then also there's like this playoffs at the end of the year? Or is it just like, because I don't know that I could change my mindset to get behind that. I
I
understand why people think that, but I just don't think it would ever work.
I'm with you. I think that it's just a product of how we grew up, which side of the pond I think we grew up. I think it's a product of that because I've had to adjust kind of my mind in that being a Formula One fan where the championship is over. There's still 3 months left in the season, and the championship was just decided last week. So
Hmm.
it that can happen too, where you just have a team that kind of runs away with it, and then it kind of presents that challenge. But I kind of like the idea of an end of season tournament. That's what we grew up with here in the States. End of season tournament that we call the playoffs, and you're crowned a champion. Obviously, regular season has something that plays into that, but I kind of like the idea of a tournament. Yes, there's some streakiness and luck involved in that, but I think that's just a product of how we grew up, and I'm going to be on the side of what we know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, like, yes, of course, it's annoying when a team that is 83 and 81 wins the World Series, as we've seen before. But I think that's the fun of the playoffs, right? That's the reason that people love March Madness, is that, like, yeah, the number one seed, they win pretty much every time. But as we saw a couple years ago, like, there's going to come a time where they're just not going to win that first round game. And yeah, I don't know if it's an American thing or if it's like, we love the underdog story, or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think it's cool that that more teams get a shot. I'm trying to think of what else. Is there anything else that's jumped out to you over the past week here of playoff games that we haven't covered?
I still think what's jumped out to me over these games is still just the importance of situational hitting. Like I think baseball went towards the analytics a lot with the strikeouts don't matter and like just hit bombs and like it's playoff baseball has always been about the same thing. Can you move the guy first to third, get the sack fly, get the sack bunt, hit and run. It's always been about the situational hitting. Don't strike out, that kind of thing. Getting walks, getting on base. Jose Altuve, I think in all of his leadoff at bats has gotten on base one way or another. Like the pressure that puts on a team
He's
in the
so
first
good,
inning is
man.
invaluable. And like the
Yeah,
way that I would compare that Astros team to the way the early Yankees teams were built in the late '90s and stuff. They had not one guy at their position was the best player, but they were just dudes that did it when it counted, and they moved the guy over that was next to them in the lineup, and that still wins baseball games. It still wins championships. Analytics hasn't changed the game that much, and that's still like kind of the takeaway that I have from that with the teams with
yeah. I
the way
mean,
they're
I,
built
I
now.
think I think both things can be true. Like, I think you need to be able to be a smart team and be able to be a team who can situationally hit, if I'm phrasing that properly. But you also need to have power. Like, you can't just be the team that manufactures runs and dinks and dunks and sack bunts all the time. You do also need the Jose Abreu's of the world to crush home runs. And I mean, has Jordan Alvarez made an out this playoffs?
I don't think so. He's hitting out of his mind right now, and even though he is a power hitter, he ended the season with like a 293 average. I mean, he's some 600 700 plus OPS. I mean, the guy just you can't get him out right now. You're right. He's having a hell of a playoff so far.
Yeah. I just think, yeah, the atmosphere's been really fun, and frankly, part of the reason that I'm also fine to see a team like the Rays get knocked out, or certainly the Marlins, is like, I don't like, as a fan, even if I don't give a shit about the result, it's just not fun to watch a game on TV where you can clearly see a bunch of empty seats. Like, as much as I've shit on Philadelphia sports fans at various times in my life, and I'm sure you have too, as a New York sports guy, like, that energy, that environment at Citizens Bank is insane. That looks so fun.
It's contagious. I think it's in line with any other Philly sporting event or any other playoff event that we've been to, and it's kind of just a shame that Tampa can't really for whatever reason bring these fans out and kind of get the city interested in that team. I mean, I guess it's cool that they got a new, maybe at the new stadium they got approved will help drive some of
Yeah, I
that.
mean maybe, but also it sucks that the fans who were there were booing. Like, maybe that's because they're the actual fans who show up during the year and they're disappointed. But like, man alive, if I'm a free agent, you're gonna have to really sell me on why I should want to play in Tampa. If the offer is like we're gonna not pay you well, but also nobody's gonna show up and you play in a shithole, like it's amazing to me that they sign anyone. I don't understand it.
It's like, really, tell me more. I'm on board. Don't you can count me in. Yeah, no, it's really, you get to have your beard. I mean, that's a plus, I guess, over the Yankees. But
That's true. That's
yeah,
true. Yeah.
it is. I could see, yeah, having free agents. I mean, having a new stadium. If it's not full, what is that really? Guys are, if you're getting paid less money, you're looking at advertising opportunities in Tampa. You might have less of that. So there's a whole
Yeah.
package deal for these guys to think about. So
Yeah, because
100%.
like, you look at a team like the Oakland and perhaps soon to be Vegas A's and like, yeah, they've always played in a dump, but you think back to those great A's teams of the past couple decades, that place was packed, especially in the playoffs. Like that stadium was rocking. And that has never been the case in Tampa. Not that I can recall, even when they made the World Series in 2008. And obviously in 2020 they made it, but there was nobody there. Like I just I, is it possible that baseball just isn't going to work in Tampa?
It it's odd because there's juice for the Lightning. I mean, the Lightning were what, like, how many
Yeah,
championships they win in the last few years, and there's juice for the Bucks. I mean, like, these are great organizations in their respective sports. So, and that the city comes out for them. So, I've always been like, we're baseball guys. That was, our sports. So I don't really know what kind of the psychology in the city is there, but it's possible that hockey and football has just achieved a greater hold over these
yeah.
decades there.
But I guess the same is true of like Miami, right? Like people come out for the Dolphins, people come out for the Heat. They sure as hell don't seem to come out for the Marlins.
Well, that's a kind of a different situation. That right anytime the Marlins are good, the ownership comes in and sells the whole team, like right when
That
they
doesn't
when they have a
help. It doesn't
chance. So
help.
there's some animosity there, I think, with the fans and the whole taxpayer thing with the stadium. But it's
Yeah,
still not great. It's still a bit of the same thing in Miami too.
yeah. But yeah, I think that's all we got. Do you want to make any bold predictions? Who do you at this exact moment? So right now where we sit, the Rangers are through. The Astros are up 2-1. They got a chance to close it out later tonight. We're recording this as the Phillies and Braves are playing Game 3. Is that still 1-1?
It is. Let me
No,
see.
it's on
My
your
box
TV
score
behind you.
went away. I shut it off because we were getting some weird lights there. But it is.
Oh, that's okay.
It
It's
is
just
six
audio.
one Phillies.
Oh shit, that all happened in the past half hour while we were recording. All right, so Phillies, I would say that they'll take a 2-1 lead, but as we know, the Braves can put up runs quickly. But yeah, so Phillies Braves are 1-1 right now. Dodgers are clinging on, hanging on for dear life. Um, it seems pretty likely that we're going to have a Rangers Astros ALCS, unless the Dodgers pull something off. It seems like D backs, and then Braves or Phillies. I'm not ready to call that series yet. Who do you have getting to the World Series, and then who do you have winning it at this point?
I'm gonna say this is more bold prediction is more kind of what I want to happen versus what I think might happen, but I'd like to see like Texas get through.
I want
Most
Rangers.
likely
I want Rangers Phillies.
Texas to get through. Most likely, what I'm assuming is going to be Houston. I think they just edged them out a little bit on the pitching. The hitters on the Rangers just might be a little bit too much for the Houston lineup finally this year. And from the other side, it's hard to like kind of put my energy towards a Philadelphia team or even like the Atlanta team that kind of already won. I mean, it'd be cool to see the Diamondbacks get through, and beat either Philly or Atlanta to get to the World Series. And
Yeah, I'm a little salty about the Diamondbacks because they basically kept the Cubs out of the playoffs. I mean, the Cubs went 1-6 against the Diamondbacks in September, and that was essentially the difference of making the playoffs or not. But in some ways, maybe that would make me feel better because it's like, well, at least they actually were a good team, and they do have some fun pieces. I mean, like I'm sure baseball doesn't want there to be a Diamondbacks. Imagine like a Diamondbacks Twins World Series. What the ratings of that would be?
that would be, yeah, I could see Rob Manfred just shaking his head right now. Like he's like, nope, that's not what we're looking for.
It's
But
not the script.
no, not this, not in the MLB script.
Yeah.
But definitely out of Diamondbacks and the Rangers, I think they're in that scenario. I think the Rangers would just have they spent the money that that's a win for free agents there, and there's money, so I think they would take it in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, D-backs would be a cool story for sure. I think in terms of like just what would interest me the most, I think Rangers Phillies would be really cool, and I would definitely be rooting for the Rangers because like the man Rangers fans they've been through it. Like to be, I've said this many times, but in 2011, it
Oh
sucked for
man,
us as Cubs fans too, losing since they lost the Cardinals. But to be one strike away from winning the World Series twice in the same game and not get it done, I have often felt that if that had happened to the Cubs, like the city of Chicago would have burned to the ground again. Like
it,
I can't imagine it.
it's got to be up there with some of those the most sickening like sports moments that has ever existed. It's got
Well,
to be
and
just up
then
there. Yeah, it's
2015, like what the stuff that preceded the Jose Batista bat flip, they just completely forgot how to field that inning. I went back and watched that full inning recently, and it's crazy because like before that there was this weird catcher's interference call that a run scored. People were like throwing shit on the field, but then in that inning, Elvis Andrews, I think, and then maybe Beltre or somebody, like very sure-handed fielders, they just couldn't catch the ball. It was three straight errors with Cole Hamels on the mound, and they just completely imploded. And it was very, frankly, like as a Cubs fan, especially at that time before the Cubs won the World Series, it was a little triggering. I was like, I've seen this before.
yeah, it just it proves like at any level, whether we're talking when we were growing up playing baseball or as we play softball now up to all the way to the major leagues, like there's just some things that some teams can just unravel and that can happen at any point, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunately one of those examples.
Oh,
They
I
can
always
get
think
crazy.
about that. I mean, you and I play softball together, and in the playoff games in our rec league in Central Park, sometimes you get tight and you start to feel the pressure. It's like I cannot imagine what that is like on the professional level, knowing what's riding on it.
Exactly, and it's a different game just being, if you're down 3-0, 6-0 in a playoff game, 6-1 right now, like the Braves are down, it's a tough game to play when you are, in that scenario. And like you said, you tighten up, you try to do too much. I mean, and in baseball, like it's such a mental game that, that can end up
Yeah.
hurting you in the end. So that's why some of these things can go the way they go.
It is true. But all right, so we're gonna let you go, Evan. If you got anything to plug, where do you want people to find you?
Uh, sure, yeah, I'm at Evan Hernandez Comedy on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Um, yeah, all the upcoming shows are listed there. Friday show in Brooklyn every Friday where Cuba Libre Comedy. Check that out. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, yeah, hell yeah, we'll be back. Kevin and I should be back next week. We're going to talk about the Tom Ricketts letter to the fans, letting everybody know, how that the season didn't go as planned, and he promises to maybe spend a couple extra shekels here and there. But we'll talk about that next time. Until then, we'll see you around, and I don't know, go Twins. All right.